I mean, the fentanyl epidemic that we see today and like all kinds of issues that are related to mental health is often things that can be corrected if people have the help. What's happening today is people are pulled away from their communities, their church, their in various ways, and due to social media and so on, and just like a massive amounts of isolation that is leading to really like a mental health epidemic, I would say, and that's something that we all should really work on.
Welcome to Business with Purpose. I'm your host, Molly Stillman of stillbeingmolly.com, and this show is all about bringing you the stories behind the brands, companies, and small businesses that are changing the world. Each week, I interview an entrepreneur, CEO, nonprofit director, community leader, or just an incredible person who is trying to make a positive impact, not only through their personal life, but also with their career. My goal is to show you that no matter what you do for a living, you can make an impact wherever you are. My guest this week is Dilan Dane. He is the CEO of System2, the first relationship-based technology-accelerated fitness brand that prioritizes longevity over quick fix exercise fads. Dilan grew up in Sri Lanka, South Asia, and his family's income was less than $20 a month. Through the kindness and generosity of others, Dilan was able to move to the U.S. at the age of 20 and received a scholarship and financial aid to attend the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, where he studied computer science and physics. But his time at MIT was not always easy, as he barely spoke English and experienced social anxiety. It made it difficult for him to find friends, and he was completely overwhelmed by adapting to both a new culture and intense curriculum. This left Dilan feeling physically and mentally exhausted. After passing out during a final exam, the result of staying up multiple nights due to anxiety and depression, Dilan's professor reached out, changing the course of his life. This professor offered Dilan the chance to retake the exam under the condition that he seek help immediately for his depression. Dilan was so grateful for the support and he agreed. Fast forward, he eventually, through therapy and the introduction of fitness in his life, this really began a life change for him. And so through his passion for fitness and physical and mental health, in addition to his experience with his time at MIT, he founded System2. I absolutely loved this conversation with Dilan. He is awesome. He is just such an incredible guy. I know that you are going to love hearing his story and all about his business. But before I get to my conversation with Dilan, I want to thank one of our partners of the show, and that is my girl, Michelle Smith at Mama Suds. Now, we're heading into summertime, and it is still all about using clean ingredients around your home. Whether it's spring cleaning or summer cleaning, fall cleaning, winter cleaning, it is so important to be using ingredients that are clean and safe for you and your family. Mama Suds uses plants and minerals to make their products. Absolutely nothing synthetic. Michelle, the head mama at Mama Suds, has spent a crazy amount of time tracking down just the most exceptional ingredients that are safe for your family and sustainable for the planet. Mama Suds wants to inspire you to live a smart, healthy, and sustainable life that brings you joy and peace of mind. If you're new to Mama Suds, some of my personal favorite products are the Mama Suds household cleaner, which you can use on everything, in addition to Mama Suds Castile soap. Both are so good. Try them out at mamasuds.com and use the coupon code MOLLY for 15% off your order. Without further ado, on to my conversation with Dilan Dane. Dilan, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me, Molly.
I am really inspired by everything I have learned about you so far. And so I'm really excited just to hear kind of a little bit more behind the scenes of you and your story. So we're just not going to waste any time. I'm going to have you give us the Dilan 101. So tell us who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are today.
Thank you very much. Well, let's see, where do I begin? 101. So I'm Dilan. I live in San Francisco today and run a fitness tech startup company with the mission of bringing a personal trainer and eventually a team of coaches to every human. And it's been a long journey. It all began a while back in Sri Lanka, where I was born, and grew up in Sri Lanka. My parents are, lower middle class folks in Sri Lanka. My dad was a police officer and my mom a housewife. And it was a pretty wild time to grow up in that country, because as I was when I was a toddler, a war began that affected everyone's life in various ways, and I spent my first 20 years of my life there, but it was a very tumultuous 20 years because of the war situation affecting our own lives, and especially my dad being a police officer, and also, my parents were under a lot of stress economically and other reasons. So there were other domestic issues that I had to deal with, and then. But the one thing I had going for myself was that I was always good in school. So this remarkable thing happened. Essentially, I got urged to apply to U.S. universities by someone who worked at the U.S. Embassy, who was a friend of a friend, and I did, and I ended up getting into MIT, and ended up moving to Boston to go to college, which was an absolutely life-changing thing in so many ways. Just the having the opportunity to learn from incredible people in their respective fields. That was very inspiring, and also just getting a whole new perspective. It's the first time I stepped in on an airplane, right? And to live like my life all the way back there and begin it all new. But it was also incredibly challenging. I went through a very dark 2 years, the first couple of years at MIT. It was the culture shock combined with the fact that I actually spoke very poor English, or barely did really, and catching up to all of that while trying to keep up with a pretty intense curriculum was very quite insane. And but then again, someone that took interest in me, really, one of my professors, noticed that I seemed to be struggling in a very almost dangerous way, I would say, and he made sure that I got help, started seeing a counselor, and getting a lot of help around working on myself, working on my mental health and physical health. So that was again like a huge turning point. And so I started this journey with the help of, my therapist primarily, but also other people in my life, to better myself, really deal with a lot of the circumstance that I was in, the challenges that I was facing, but also at the time, but also a lot of baggage, trauma, etc., from childhood that all of us have in a way, and that's been this lifelong journey to learn how to live better, happier, and also have a positive impact on the world. And then since then, I graduated. I moved to San Francisco. I started a company that did quite well, and we got acquired by Google. And then I've started a couple more companies since then, and it's all in tech. And the latest iteration of all that is something I'm very passionate about, as I said earlier, to bring the type of coaching and support that I had to a lot more people. So working on that now. And that might be, is that a good one?
I'd say that's a good you were being very humble, I have to say, that you just kind of I think that's the good 36,000 foot view of Dilan. Yeah. But obviously I want to get to everything you're doing with System2 and just the innovation I feel like you're bringing to kind of this personal training and fitness industry. But I want to go back, and because I think that there's so much power in learning the story and the why behind a business. And while on the surface, people might see something like System2 and be like, oh, cool. This is a very kind of 2021, techie, San Francisco based startup that's talking about fitness. But when they really learn the why behind why you started this company and the why behind you as a founder is really, really powerful. And I mean, that's the whole reason I started this podcast, is to be able to get to the bottom of those stories. And so, having grown up in Sri Lanka during a tumultuous time, and one thing I know about you is that, I mean, your family's income was less than $20 a month.
Right.
And to go from that to then having a scholarship to MIT, like, as you kind of alluded to, like, that's a big jump. Not only are you jumping when it comes to cultural, just the cultural differences, but, as you mentioned, the language barriers and just the rigor of I had a friend from high school who went to MIT, and he actually ended up going on to, he wasn't the inventor of it, but he was like the one who developed the entire photo section of Facebook. That's the kind of person he was. Nice. Like, that was like his brainchild. And then of course, like, as all San Franciscans, Silicon Valley people do, they like work at Google or Facebook, and then they like go on to work at some other like massive tech company. Anyway, so knowing like his kind of talking about, because I remember at one point when I was in college, I was like, how's MIT? And he was like, it's hard. It's really hard. So anyway, so all that to say, what was it as a child where you're growing up in Sri Lanka that, you'd mentioned that it was a friend of a friend who worked at the US embassy. What was your kind of schooling and childhood like that these adults clearly saw something in you and saw this potential? What do you think that was?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it was several things. I mean, I had this very complicated relationship with my father. He is this, good man who wants to put food on the table and, for his family and so on. But he was struggling to do that, and partially because of the economic situation. And his way of dealing with that was alcohol. So he had an issue with alcoholism, and he would turn into like a completely different person on alcohol, with heavy anger issues and so on. And there was like very intense, a decent amount of domestic abuse happening as I was growing up in my home. And but at the same time, this is also the person whose love I craved the most, and I wanted him to, care about me and love me and see me, right? And so I distinctly remember this. This was one year when I was still in like second grade, maybe. I somewhat randomly, I mean, when you're a child, I kind of came top of class in one of those end of the year exams. And my father was so proud of this. And I remember him like telling our relatives and his friends all about this. And that became my identity, to like try to get there year over year so that I would get that recognition and love, right? And so that led to me really doing really well in school and just winning a number of academic sort of competitions and awards and so on. And that's what eventually led to this person at the US Embassy noticing that I probably had enough credibility built up to apply to colleges in the US.
Wow. I think what you just shared, number one, thank you for sharing that. But number two, I think that's a story that a lot of people can relate to. I think, number one, the phrase, I had a really complicated relationship with my father. Like, if I had $1 for every time I've heard somebody say that, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying that that's like a good thing. I think it's just, unfortunately, in a lot of situations, it's relatively
Yeah.
common. And then I think too, this motivation to succeed so that you receive praise and love from this person that you care about and you look up to, like that is also a very
Absolutely.
common thing. And I think even in uncomplicated relationships, a lot of times we find ourselves doing that. My sweet daughter, who is 7, she is the kind of person who, like, I know that a lot of times her motivation to do something is like she wants to make me proud. And I have to remind her over and over again. I'm like, honey, like, I love you and I'm proud of you, even if you don't do these things. But there's this like innate desire in us to do these things so that we receive love. And so, I think, your story is not all that uncommon.
Oh, no. I mean, there's a running joke in the Silicon Valley that all of these startup founders have daddy issues.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. I could totally see that. So when you received the scholarship to come to MIT, I have to ask, like, what was it like? You're on that plane, you land, you're at MIT that first day. I mean, what, like, tell me about that, because I can't imagine what that must have been like.
It was such a whirlwind of a day, and emotionally so intense. I do remember it quite vividly. There was all this excitement. I mean, just getting on a plane was really exciting. This idea of like flying, like, it's just, this giant metal tube. If you have never done that before, and if you only do it as like an adult almost, you remember that quite well. And first day, there were, to be fair, they did a lot of things to try to onboard us, and especially the international students, to lessen the culture shock. But in my case, I think the biggest challenge was the language, because so to add some context, I had never really used English to like communicate, as a language, like speak in English. I could understand written English reasonably okay, but nowhere ready to begin what I had to do at MIT. And MIT, of course, didn't care about this, because being an engineering school, they just looked at my math scores, not my verbal SAT scores and so on, which were really, really bad. But I just remember sitting in my first class was chemistry, and I was sitting there in the lecture hall, and the class is going on, and I'm trying to not start like crying. I just like trying to hold my tears back, because I could barely understand what was going, like, just, the words that was being spoken. And I was terrified that like maybe the professor will ask me a question, like, how am I going to answer? Like, I just this is completely being lost. And so that was really challenging. And what happens though is you learn relatively fast, especially when you just really have to, when you're forced to. And like your friend said, MIT is a very intense and hard place to survive at. So I mean, not everyone does survive that place. But I did.
Well, I know that, fast forward a couple of years, and you briefly mentioned that you had a professor who really saw you, and in some ways I mentored you, kind of took you under his wings, so to speak. And there's a really powerful story that involves this professor that led to you finding fitness and exercise.
Yeah, no, that is a beautiful story, Molly, because I feel like a lot of us have in some way, this angelic person show up in your life, and it's might be for just like a moment, but that really makes a big difference in your life, right? In my case, I was going through a lot of depression, a lot of struggling. My grades were bad, and I was just like hiding and not dealing with it, and being extremely unhealthy. And MIT especially also has, there's a well-known thing that they have like a very high student suicide rate, dropout rate, and stuff like that. There's a lot of mental health issues. And I was really going down that path a lot. What happened in this situation was 2 years in, I took a class with one of these classes with this professor, and I didn't get the grade at the end. And instead he asked me to come see him. And I show up the first time I really talked to him. And he was like, Dylan, it seemed like you were doing really well at the very beginning of the semester, but your finals, you basically failed. You have, like, I was under so much stress. I had passed out during the final exam, and my answer sheet was completely empty. And he was like, well, you basically failed the class because you failed the finals. And this looks very unusual, the way you're dealing with this. And he suggested that he was going to let me take the finals again, but under the condition that I seek help immediately. And in fact, he had booked time for me at the psychiatric department with a therapist to meet with me, and he basically told me that he would only let me take the finals again if I see this therapist. And there are cultural, like, I grew up in South Asia, in Sri Lanka, obviously, and as a culture, people don't really look favorably upon things like therapy in the societies. So this was something that I probably knew that I should have done, but I was not open to it until this professor forced me to. So he almost takes me by hand and walks me to the therapist's office, and they do an evaluation on me. And then they considered almost locking me up in one of those, like, this person might be, a danger to themselves kind of situation. Then they ended up not doing that. They ended up setting me up with 5 days a week of therapy and some medication. And so this was like this huge turning point. And this is what this individual, my professor, did, forcing me to get the help that I needed. And then the second person that in that journey that made that big difference is my first therapist, Laurie, who really took me under her wing and helped me out in so many ways over the next couple of years in my college life. And she got me to work out every day. One of the very first things that she did, because she believed that physical health is really the first step towards mental health well-being. And she was absolutely right. That basically became the cornerstone habit in my life that's really helped me in so many ways since then. So yeah, that was the turning point, and that became like a lifelong obsession to better myself and try to see if I could help bring that same level of support to some other people.
That story to me inspires, I think, two segments of people. Number one, I think what your professor did is should be an encouragement to other professors, teachers, coaches. Even just like, if you're an adult and you have a younger person in your life that you are a mentor to, or you have a bit of influence on, the power in what he did by saying, I see you, and I know that this thing on paper that says you failed, I know that that's not you. So I'm going to give you a second chance, but also I see what you're struggling with, and we're going to get help together. That, and as you said, I mean, that is a life-changing thing. Yes. Had that professor not said, you know what, I'm going to number one, give you a second chance, but number two, it's going to be on this, with this stipulation that you get help, and I'm going to make an appointment for you. That is so impactful. I mean, I was a high school teacher in like what feels like another lifetime. And to know, like, I've had some of my students who are now, they're grown adults, married, and have kids, which it feels weird that I'm like, how am I old enough that like my students that I taught when they were in high school are old enough to have like children and be married? That's very weird. It makes me feel very old, even though I don't think I'm old. But when they reach out to me, 10, 12 years later, and they say like, oh, Miss Buckley. And I'm like, okay, number one, my last name's not Buckley anymore. Two, you can call me Molly now. It's fine. And they'll just say like, hey, this thing that you did for me, or this thing that you said to me impacted me. And I remember it all these years later. Like that is such an encouragement. So I think both ways. One, letting that person who has impacted you know that they impacted you. And number two, like if you have influence over somebody younger and you see that they're struggling, help them.
Yeah.
Help them.
That is that's a very astute observation, Molly. It reminds me of there's a lot of research in this area too. When you look at successful people, what they almost always seem to have in common is someone. It might be someone who, like a really great parents who are always behind them, but oftentimes it's not even that, right? Like some people come from very struggling, very, very difficult backgrounds to go on to be successful. Yeah. But what's almost always present in their life is some individual who believed in them in like one of these pivotal moments and saw them and saw what was necessary for them and kind of directed them in that direction. There is a great book called Grit by Angela Duckworth.
Yes, I love that book. Fantastic book.
Yeah, and then she talks about this in her research where she saw that this is a common thread in a lot of successful, highly motivated people, that having that person who believed in them. I mean, yeah, and if all of us can be that person for someone, that would be amazing. But also, it just highlights even more the importance of investing in teachers, right? Yeah. Like teachers, professors, coaches. These are things that everyone needs.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other segment of the population I think your story really speaks to is people who are in a similar situation to the situation you were in. And that's, I mean, we see so many people who are under just incredible amounts of stress. Maybe they grew up in a home where like you didn't talk about your feelings. You didn't talk about what was going on in your life. Or maybe they come from a culture where it's like, no, you don't get therapy. You don't get help. You're fine. And they sweep these things under the rug and they run themselves ragged and they find themselves at a place where, like you mentioned that they were like, is he a danger to himself? I mean, is he in a place where like he needs legitimate, serious help? And so also your willingness to kind of buck the trend of what, your family and culture tells you of saying like, nope, you don't need help. You couldn't do this. And actually saying, okay, I'm going to get the help. Like that also, I think is really important. And we've seen this shift in the last few years towards being a little bit more open about talking about mental health and physical health and spiritual health and how all those things are 100% intertwined. And so I'd love to expand on that just a little bit, what that was like for you to really begin to put aside all of what you knew about getting help for your physical, mental, and emotional health and how you began to move forward with that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm able to openly, obviously, talk about it now, but at the time, it was a very difficult thing to admit that you even need help, right? And you deal with a lot of shame and embarrassment. I mean, I didn't tell that I had seen a therapist for many, many, many years. Certainly not while I was in college. I didn't tell anyone that I was seeing a therapist because I was embarrassed about it for whatever reason. And that had a lot to do with cultural reasons and coming across as someone who is maybe damaged or not perfect in some way. Yeah. So yes, it's and like you said, I think the changes that we're seeing, people being more forthcoming about talking about these issues, including celebrities, that will really help, I think. And also, if we can find ways to provide that kind of services to more people at a lower cost point, I think that would make a huge difference in the world. I mean, the fentanyl epidemic that we see today and like all kinds of issues that are related to mental health is often things that can be corrected if people have the help what's happening today is people are pulled away from their communities, their church, their in various ways, and due to social media and so on, and just like a massive amounts of isolation.
Yeah.
That is leading to really like a mental health epidemic, I'd say, and that's something that we all should really work on.
Yeah, it truly is something that I think the conversation around this topic is helping to change lives. And obviously, like, there are people that haven't been reached yet, and we need to continue these conversations. I almost kind of equate it to, like, as a parent, when I have to remind my kids like 87 times the same thing I've already said.
Right.
But it's like that, just drilling it in, and eventually it's like, oh, it clicks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and you obviously, you mentioned that one of these kind of keystone habits that you developed during therapy and during kind of really working on your improving your health overall was fitness. And you were introduced to this. And so I have to ask, like, was fitness or kind of the exercise world at all something that you knew as a child, or was it just kind of like you just played and that was like your exercise? Was it really, as an adult, was that really more when you were introduced to this as a concept to taking care of yourself?
Yeah, no, I'd say largely it was definitely a concept that I was introduced to as an adult. And I should really, a lot of credit goes to my first therapist who, one of the problems that we see with mental health therapy right now is there is a bent towards just prescribing people medication, right? Like very quickly, almost too quickly sometimes.
Yeah.
And the thing is, medication does help, but it doesn't really change how you feel in the long run, right? Because you end up, building adaptation to it, and you need higher and higher doses and so on. And what really helps with mental health is fixing your core set of habits, both psychological habits and physical habits. And when you look at the research, I mean, this is extremely obvious. Physical health, moving your body is the primary thing. Getting out, moving your body is the primary thing that makes people happy. It's just like, it's so clear. It's just that even among mental health professionals, it's rare to see people really emphasize that, really focus on getting their clients, getting their patients to really holistically invest in themselves. So a lot of credit should go to my therapist who basically made me go to the gym, figure out this, and got me running every day and all this stuff, and she was a bit like an accountability coach to me. She was like, she'd ask me every time that I see her, that if I did that every day this week, and if I miss a day, that's fine. But she was like very encouraging, and like you said, you do things to make other people happy, and when there's someone on your ass trying to make you, make sure that you work out, you do something. Yeah. So that was really great of her.
I'm going to take a quick break from my conversation with Dilan to thank our other partner of the show, and that is Dain. And I love Dain so much that I actually have the founder, Julie Billingham, here with me to share a little bit more about why this ethical brand is so incredible. Julie?
Oh, Molly, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to partner with you and to be a part of this community that you've built. I mean, Dain is a sustainable footwear and fashion brand, and we have this steadfast commitment to creating authentic fashion and fashion accessories. And it's really our great honor to produce things that matter. And our Haitian craftsmen and women really take such pride in each handbag we make, each pair of sandals that we assemble. And we just love what we do so much. And we're proud to craft. And so thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And for those of you who want to check out Dain, you can do so online at DEUXMAINS.com. And you can use the promo code Molly, and that will get you 15% off your purchase. Now back to my conversation with Dilan Dane. So you developed this keystone habit of fitness, and your mental, emotional, physical, spiritual health all started to improve.
Yeah.
Fast forward, you move to San Francisco, you start this company called Scoopler, you sell it to Google. And then where did the idea for System2 come? Because I know, again, like this whole story that we've been talking about is really the foundation for what even began the journey towards starting System2. And so it's like all these little steps that led you to that place.
Yeah.
And your vision and goal of bringing kind of personal training to everyone in the world. And that's like a very lofty goal, but I love your motivation behind it and the impact that it can have. And so talk to us about, where did you get the idea for this, and what did that look like as you began to develop this company?
So that System2 really combines two big threads in my own life. Now, we talked about the fitness side of things. And the other thing that I've been really passionate about is artificial intelligence and advancements in that. I was fortunate enough to learn from some folks in the AI field who are called almost like father figures of artificial intelligence at MIT. And that got me really interested in AI. And I did like a number of projects, worked on a number of projects throughout my career very related to AI, including at Google. And it's this incredible technological innovation, a tool that can really revolutionize a lot of sectors. As you know, there's been plenty of talk about AI. And what I saw is that because of recent advancements in AI, especially with computer vision and language models, there might be an opportunity to take services like personal training and make that scalable, right? Like, what if a trainer could train like 10 people or 100 people as opposed to just one person at a time, because we could give a trainer 1,000 eyes as opposed to like just one set of eyes, right? Mm-hmm. That's what they would have. Yeah. So that was the initial thought. And obviously with building a business, you just have to time it right. The technology needs to be mature enough to build something like this, which it really wasn't possible even 5 years ago. Yeah. But because of recent advancements in AI, now we have the ability, the same technology that Tesla is using, for example, to build their, self-driving technology that Tesla, Google, all those companies are using. You could use the same technology to look at someone and know if they're doing a certain movement correctly, right? And which is what a trainer does a lot of the time. And think about what a personal trainer does. They do really two things. They create a program for you and hold you accountable. They make sure that you show up at the gym, you do something at a given time. And then the second thing that they do is that they look at you and they give you feedback. Mm-hmm. They make sure that you do what you do correctly. So the thinking was that we could use these advancements in computer vision and give our trainers like many eyes, where essentially through the user's mobile phones, so that the trainer can see their clients not just when they work out in person, but at their own home or wherever, while working out, while traveling, working out from a hotel room, regardless of the situation. You could create that one-on-one connection in a remote manner. So that was the thinking. And I truly believe that one of the most exciting things about advancements in the AI is that we will have certain services that are done today by humans delivered in an AI enhanced way. I mean, driving again is a great example. If you like driving, that's great, but like it's often a routine task that people do, right? Ideally, no one will really have to be driving all the time. So what if we can have artificial intelligence help us with that? And it's similarly, you could apply the same logic to services all across the board, whereas I am personally very passionate about services that can impact real human lives, like personal training, mental health coaching, meditation coaching, dietary coaching, stuff like that, that can be delivered with the help of AI.
Yes. And that's what I think is so unique is that you combine your passion for technology. Obviously, you went to MIT, you live in Silicon Valley, so you clearly have a passion for technology and engineering and all of that. But then you also tie in this very personalized human to human one-on-one component. And it's like a perfect marriage of the two. And so you developed System2. So for people that maybe have never heard of it, how does it work?
Yeah. Molly, I sometimes think that all problems are problems of loneliness, like, learning something or finding motivation to do something. Everyone does so much better when they are not struggling alone, when they have someone to edge them onwards, right? So that's what System2 does. It gets you a coach, a trainer, and really a friend who helps you move forward in your fitness journey. They don't, fitness is really not about your body fat percentage or how good you look on Instagram or whatever. It's really about getting out there and moving, right? And System2 makes it possible for a coach to help you achieve that goal on a day-to-day basis. And even if the coach-client relationship in this case is remote. And the benefit of that is that we're able to provide the service at a significantly lower cost point compared to, if you saw a trainer even 3 times a week, that would cost you probably $1,000 a month. And so we want to give you that level of, if not better, right? Like our coaches oftentimes talk to our clients almost every single day using text messages. These relationships turn into friendships, really. And now you have this friend who you kind of friend/coach who you're really accountable to doing your daily workout. And that really motivates people to move. And so we're able to provide that service for just $99 a month. So the way it works is you sign up, you go through an onboarding process, the coach learns about your specific needs, they design your custom program, and then from then on, the coach assigns you workouts for X number of days, the number of days that you commit to working out. But also even on off days, they will keep you motivated, keep you feeling good, and hold you accountable on a day-to-day basis for you to do what you commit to doing. Then when you do the workout, you have the option to do it with your phone, where you have the camera on, and the phone records a video of how you do the movement. And then your coach will analyze that video using with some help from AI. On the very same day and give you feedback, make sure that you're doing your movement correctly, and let you know if you're doing something correctly, and help you move forward again. So it all really boils down to having a figure in your life that helps you make the progress that you want to make yourself. And we provide that service at a very, very affordable cost point. When you think about the value of having a good health, developing a habit, and having a real human behind you helping you out throughout that journey, it's a pretty remarkable experience, and people are loving it so far.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, to be honest, for $99 a month to get that kind of personalized relationship with somebody, I mean, right. I know at like my local gyms, a personal trainer is usually like anywhere from $30 to $50 a session.
Right.
So that can add up super fast. And then it's not like you're getting that support and accountability in between your workouts. That's really right. Just like the person that you show up and they help you do your personal training like there. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So everything that you're saying is just so invaluable, and you're developing those habits and those routines that then become sustainable. And it's not this like, quick, like lose 30 pounds in 45 minutes. Like that's just not, that's not sustainable. And you're taking a much more holistic approach. And, it's so important too to factor in different people's, just everybody is different and everybody's metabolism is different. Everybody's, people have injuries. And, what I'm able to do at almost 36 years old is very different than what I could do back when I was running half marathons. Right. I can't run half marathons anymore because half marathons destroyed my knees. And so now, what I mean? So, and then I've had many pregnancies. So like my body's just different in my mid 30s than it was in my early 20s. And so I think taking those things into account and understanding how different bodies work and all of that is so important. And I think too speaks to what you were saying earlier. It almost removes that that shame factor is so many people avoid taking the steps that they need to get the help that they need, whether it be with fitness or, physical, mental, because there's this like shame attached and they're afraid that somebody's going to be like, well, your BMI is at the obese level. And it's just like, well, that is an outdated metric. And so like, you know what I mean? Like, anyway, I could go on like a whole rant about that, but yeah, that's
exactly right. Yeah. And, meeting you where you are and also focusing on, just like you said, focusing on very, very science-based approaches towards building habits rather than doing some, one fancy workout, right? Like our focus is entirely on helping you build healthy habits so that you will be fit, you will keep moving for the rest of your life. Rather than just like getting some magical outcome in one session. And the other cool thing I want to mention is that you mentioned injuries, pregnancies. The cool thing about working with a product like us is that we have a team of trainers who are all very highly qualified with a variety of experiences. We have trainers who are experts in training around pregnancies, like postpartum, prepartum type of training. And then trainers who specialize in training older folks, people recovering from injuries and so on. So you can switch between trainers too, which is really cool. Yeah. Your circumstances change.
Man, that is incredible. And I think is something that, maybe there's somebody listening who is just like, you know what, this is something that I think would really work for me. And, and I think especially with so many people, when COVID hit and all the gyms closed and all of a sudden everybody's like having to work out from home or trying to figure out a new routine. Because I'm a member at a local kind of like I guess you would call it like a boutique fitness type place, group classes. And so for the last year, I've done all of my workouts on Zoom and, some people are like, oh, well, are you going to just quit? And I'm like, well, for me, I love the personalized the group setting, even though it's on Zoom, but there's still like that level of accountability. But to take that even further, to have somebody there that's one-on-one and being like, oh, your form is off here, or let's try this here, let's adjust here. I think that could really motivate somebody who maybe, for the last year hasn't worked out since their gym's closed. So how do people, if somebody's interested in trying it and they, maybe they're a little nervous, like help ease some of maybe their anxiety for them on why they should try it or how it works?
Absolutely. I mean, go to getsystem2.com and sign up. And you can try the product. There's a free trial for 2 weeks, and we can even extend that if you don't feel like you got enough of an experience during that time. But within those 2 weeks, you would meet with the trainer, you would talk to them, you would get to know them, you would have a personalized plan designed for a whole month at the very least. And it's very easy to go check it out. There's no commitment, there's no contract. It's even if after you become a member, it's month to month. Yeah, I mean, our highest priority is making sure every single person who signs up is incredibly happy with the product, which is what we're seeing so far, which we are very proud of. And so, go to getsystem2.com and you can sign up right away.
Awesome. Okay, Dilan, Now is the portion of the show where I transition just a little bit and I ask some fun get to know you questions, even though we've been getting to know you for the last, 45 minutes or so. So Dylan, are you ready for the get to know you round?
Do it.
All right. So question number 1 is, what is your most unusual talent?
My most unusual talent. I'm very good at trusting people very quickly, I think.
I like that.
Yeah. and people find it strange sometimes, but I seem to connect with people and build trusting relationships very, very quickly. So that's great.
I love that. And I'm kind of the same way. So maybe that's wwhy I love that. And
that's awesome. Yeah.
My husband and I were talking about this the other day because I can make friends with somebody in the grocery store very quickly. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's like we've known each other for like 50 years. And meanwhile, my husband is like not that way. Not that he's like standoffish, but he's just not the kind of person who's going to like strike up a conversation and like make best friends right away. So I love that. That's a really good, that is a talent because that's hard for people. Okay. What is something that is really important to you, but you never really get the chance to talk about it?
Oh, that is a good one. Let me think. I usually don't feel like I have trouble talking about things that I'm interested in, but so that makes it a little bit tricky. Maybe I don't know if it's talking about it so much, but like as my parents are aging, just like wanting to spend more time with them and preserving those memories. Really, yeah, like learning more about my parents, maybe. Like that is something that I don't get to talk about, at least talk to them about very often.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I can relate to that. I can absolutely relate to that. That's my mom died when I was in high school, and that's like one of my regrets is like, I mean, granted, I was a teenager, so I didn't know any better, but I think back and I go, man, there's so many questions that like I would have loved to have asked her and would have loved to have known and things like that. So I like that. All right. So inevitably there's going to be a movie made about your life because clearly there needs to be. So who's going to play you in the movie about your life? Who do you want to play you?
That one's easy because I a few years ago, I mean, I was a big nerd. I've always been. I still am. But then I also decided that I need to become more stylish, and I wanted to pick a style icon, and I picked Jake Gyllenhaal. And the funny thing is, a couple times people have remarked, like kind of randomly, that like I kind of dress like Jake Gyllenhaal, right? So that
that's hilarious. Fun fact. In January of 2007, I was in New York City. So I used to do, in another lifetime, I used to do comedy. And I did improv and sketch comedy. And I was staying in New York City with my cousin who lives there. And it was a lifelong dream of mine to see Saturday Night Live in person. And so I camped out. These are things that you do when you're like young and like don't have responsibilities. But I camped out all night in January in New York City. It's very cold. So I slept on the street, camped out all night to get tickets to Saturday Night Live. And the host was Jake Gyllenhaal. And I did get it. And so I got to go to Saturday Night Live. I got to see it in person. And Jake Gyllenhaal was the host that night. So I don't remember who the musical guest was, but that doesn't matter because it was Jake Gyllenhaal was the host.
Right.
So
yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. I love that so much. Okay. If you were in another life to become a professional athlete, okay, what would your walk-up song be? Like, what's the song that plays that hypes you up?
Oh my God. Probably We Will Rock You by Queen.
Well, I'm a huge Queen fan. So,
I love Queen.
Yes, Dylan, we're clearly like meant to be friends.
Right?
So,
yeah.
I love it. That is perfect. That is so perfect. Even my kids love that song. My kids love Queen. We listen to a lot of Queen in this house, and my kids are always like, Alexa, play Queen. Anyway, okay. And then my last question is the question I ask all my guests, and that is, Dylan, what does it mean to you to run a business with purpose?
Steve Jobs talked about putting a dent in the universe. And to me, that is having impact on real people's lives, right? There's a lot of businesses that you can run that does make money, does build a great organization, but oftentimes you don't see the real impact on individuals. And I really care about that. I really care about how we, even if it's a small change, how we leave a small positive change on one person's life, maybe 100 people, maybe like 1,000 people if you're lucky, right? So yeah, I think seeing that change is a key thing for me. And I mean, System2 is great in that sense because I have like some of my closest friends using the product and getting in great shape. So I definitely get that.
That's awesome. Dilan, this was such a pleasure. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for how openly you share your story and how you kind of came to where you are. And I know that you are going to have an impact on a lot of people's lives.
Thank you very much for having me, Molly.
I would love to know what you loved about this episode or if there was something that you learned. If you do, let me know on social media. You can find me at Still Being Molly or at Business with Purpose Podcast on Instagram or Facebook. And don't forget to use the hashtag Business with Purpose Podcast. Another thank you to our partner of the show, Mama Suds. Don't forget to use that code Molly for 15% off and shop at mamasuds.com. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. If you're a first-time listener of the show, welcome. Be sure to visit the archives for past shows featuring incredible entrepreneurs and business owners who are quite literally changing the world with their businesses. And if you're a regular listener, thank you for tuning in and week out, and thank you for your support. Be sure to head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Radio Public, or basically wherever you listen to podcasts and click that subscribe or follow button to make sure you never miss a new episode of the show. And while you're there, would you take a moment to leave a review? Leaving a review of the show helps me to know what you're liking and how the show is personally impacting you. This show is produced by the incredible team at Third Wheel Media. Thank you so much for listening, and go do something good with purpose on purpose.